So naturally, when you've got a million and one things to do, someone decides, hey, you know what you need? Something else to work on. And this is actually because of a deal I made for a lamp that I wanted. I decided to trade the labor costs and the parts costs for this little RCA Victor tabletop set here for the rather nice lamp currently illuminating it. So, I think it's a fair deal. There's not a lot of electronics in here to work on. We look at the schematic, or the tube layout on the bottom. This is just your typical AA5. You've got a 35W4 rectifier, a 50C5 output, 5 tubes, no transformer, easy peasy. And this has been sitting in the guy's window for a while, and he's like, yeah, I've had an opportunity to sell at least twice. Odds are because it's got some sort of a horrific squeal noise that it makes. That could be any number of things. I'm really hoping it's not silver mica disease, but I'm betting it's just because things are just out of tolerance and worn out. So we're going to go ahead and just do a quick look underneath the chassis and see what's going on. Knobs are actually nice and easy to take off of here. And what's also interesting about this particular set, this is one of RCA's Golden Throat sets. They were using this particular slogan for, since I want to say the early 1950s. Some of their first televisions, one of the ones that I have, still carries this. Regardless of what that sticker says, if it's on an AA5, don't expect the world. They're not built for incredible audio fidelity, especially not with a little single output power output stage and all that. You're not gonna get a whole lot. So we'll go ahead and take the back off here. Looking at these screws, I'm fairly doubtful that these are the originals. These look like something someone just got from the hardware store and shoved in there. So the original threads are probably, yeah, you can see the original threads are toast. And also, another neat little thing, this has, you can see it in frame there at the very bottom, we have a radiophono auxiliary input, which is very handy. However, this is a transformerless set, probably with either a floating ground or a hot chassis, so that is potentially dangerous. So if we want this to have an auxiliary input, we're going to have to take some precautions to make that safe enough to use. Specifically, we're going to need to replace the power cord with a polarized one so we can make sure the chassis is always connected to the neutral. Although that is only as good as the quality of the wiring in your house. If the electrician made a boo-boo and put the hot and neutral wires backwards, then you're still screwed. But, best not to think about chances of electrocution when you're listening to your favorite music, right? Go ahead and get the bottom of the chassis screws off here. Now, I do like that the original sticker on the bottom is intact. It's nice when the documentation is still there because it makes determining model pretty easily. I don't have my radio guidebook on me, and it doesn't have every single picture of every single radio ever, so some of this stuff that can be a crapshoot with others from big name brands like RCA, it can be pretty trivial to find them online after some careful searching here. Alright, so the antenna is not attached to the back of the radio. That's kind of disappointing. It's just left free floating here, and it's got a little cardstock deal holding it in place. And it also looks like it's actually got dual speakers. Now that's interesting. It's got a single 50C5 powering 2 speakers, so that's an interesting design choice. Does mean, though, extracting the chassis may not be so easy because they're not using a plug to hook them up, I don't think. Unless, oh, they're pin jacks. How about that? Provided we can extract both of them. There we go. And just for reference, we've got black on the left and green on the right, so I don't forget. There we go. Okay. Pull this away. Looks like we've got a little heat shield at the bottom. That's actually metal rather than something like asbestos. Also a bonus. Alright, we'll go ahead and set the cabinet aside here. I'm not really interested in that at the moment. deal with the electronic troubles first and foremost. So our antenna connections look good. Tubes are all present and accounted for, and considering that the diagnosis was it made awful noise, I'm willing to bet that the tubes are all still pretty decent. Tubes are hardly, if ever, the actual problem with a radio. It's generally everything else that goes bad with age. Tubes are pretty resilient. And let's flip it over and see what we got. Oh yeah. So problem number one, it has had no service done. I mean, all these capacitors, although this one has had some pretty craptacular splicing done to get it in circuit. The rest of these, especially that one, are all original, so they're all going to have to go. That's just standard practice. And if I'm lucky, I might have all the values I need. I am running out on a few. So go ahead and we'll pull all the tubes. And since I have the diagram on the bottom, I don't got to worry about forgetting where they all go, so we can just go to town and yank all of these. Tongue saw. So it has had tube replacements in the past, so at least it has had some occasional work done to it. It looks like a Traveler branded tube. And then we've got this shield on here. This is probably the mixer. This is some sort of a crimp. There we go. And we got 1286. Alright. We'll get all those set aside. We'll get them wiped down, and then we'll do some slight chassis cleaning here. Get that all ready. Tuning assembly doesn't seem to have too much trouble rotating. We'll put a little oil on it, but that looks okay. Make sure to deoxidize the tuning control, and then we'll, after we replace the capacitors, we'll check to make sure that it's got some decent alignment. How are we going to set this down? It's no good way because all this wiring going everywhere, and I don't want to damage any of it. Okay, so what do we have? We have a 0.1 there. We have our electrolytic here, which is a 50 and a 30. Going to hazard a guess and say they're both 150 volt rated. Yep, that they are. So a 50 and a 30, and we've got a 0.047. Guarantee I have one of those. And this guy here, another 0.047. Interesting thing to note, I have a radio repair booklet from World War II that talks about how to do radio servicing on commercial sets with limited access to materials, given the war effort taking everything really important, and all the main manufacturers like Philco and RCA and everybody were busy churning out receivers and firearms and bazookas. That was Philco's specialty for the war effort. And they actually state in there that when it comes to coupling capacitors, value is not critical. They do state in there these were rated within 20% of their listed rating. So just have at it. If you don't have the exact value, no one cares. Just put something in there. Odds are it will work. And some people have stated that, yeah, you could probably put a 0.05 or a 0.047 in here for every single capacitor barring the oscillator, and it would probably still work. But we will see about that. So let's go ahead and see if I've actually got the parts that I need. Alright, so I looked through my supply of capacitors and such, and I was happy to find that I have just about everything I need. I've got the electrolytics, I've got all the main paper capacitor replacements, except for one problem. I was double checking the schematic because I had a suspicion that, like on any hot chassis set, there has to be a bypass cap from the line to either to chassis or across the lines or something in that regard, and I was right. There is actually, this 0.1 right here is doing the duty of a Y-type safety capacitor going from the filament circuit to chassis ground. This particular Dale is set up with a floating ground, so the hot connection is all by itself, going through the tube filaments and back to the power switch, and then this guy couples that to chassis ground. Now, for the sake of safety, Let me go ahead and remove that, and I'm going to have to put an order together for some extra safety caps because I still need one for the airline AA5. It's got a .1 safety cap in there that I'm not going to leave alone. Regardless of how highly voltage rated it is, it still has the potential to fail as a short circuit rather than open circuit, which is what safety caps are designed to do. And plus that means it gives the audio jack here a bit better margin of safety than it originally had. Not that it's exceptionally safe anyway, being physically grounded to this chassis with a 120 volt potential on it. Not the best. But in the meantime, we've got the soldering iron warmed up, and I'm going to go ahead and do this as a time lapse. So I'd like to point out here that what I'm actually doing with the original electrolytic capacitor is I kind of screwed up my initial plan. Normally I would just take the multi-section out and just completely replace it with the standard axial electrolytics and do just point to point. However, the layout of the tube sockets in this set and the positioning of the oscillator coil and all that actually made it more difficult to route the leads than I wanted. I probably could have just done some wire extensions, but I was having trouble with getting enough heat to the terminals on the sockets or heating them too much, and trying to dig out the original wire and then get new wire into the same socket. Not always all that easy. So what I wound up doing instead was I initially tried prepping the original leads and getting that all set up. Then I didn't like that, and I just decided to take the original capacitor, heat it up, pull out the guts, and then set up the two capacitors back inside of it with brand new leads. And I probably doubled or tripled the amount of effort that I really needed to put into it for this. But it works, and it keeps everything out of the way, and it looks relatively neat. So I just stuck with it. Capping down the side from that one safety cap, I've removed it from circuit so that there's no connection between there and the ground. We're not going to be using the phono input, so let me just make sure the switch is on radio, which it is. All that does is redirect the audio signal through, I think, the volume control actually. So we'll go ahead, we'll click that to the on position. We've already got the variac on, and let's bring it up and see if we get anything. Huh.
Every waking minute.
Interesting. Let me try something here. Okay, so shutting my fluorescent off has not helped. What's interesting is we appear to have heterodyning. That wonderful squeal we're getting. It's almost like we're getting coupling between parts of the circuits we shouldn't be getting. Yeah, that's not great.
Used to pretend like we were... No. We would never. Where I am here in Philadelphia.
We are getting a signal go through, so it is working.
One of the best children's hospitals in the world. You know, they're able to now have babies at 20 weeks.
Ooh, motorboating.
I mean, it's remarkable.
Interesting.
Based on Rocket Mortgage data in comparison to public data records. Rate yield approval only valid on certain 30-year purchase transactions. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal lender license in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030. Additional conditions or exclusions may apply.
Yeah, it's a Valentine's Day weekend concert featuring the original Ambrosia.
I wonder why we're getting that.
Hey, that's a great Scott.
Trying to get a better connection on the tube socket there. Nope.
Cheering and lights up the World Trade Center in pink after this hideous...
Hey, well, the question isn't how you pay for this giant box of crap. The question is, how much richer will you be once you have a giant box of crap? And what will you...
Not much richer, based on my own experience. That's an interesting dilemma there. Go ahead and turn my lamp back on, I guess. It's not hurting anything. Well, I can't see my computer speakers really like the sound. One other problem, though, is it might be picking up a ton of interference. Without that bypass cap, I might be letting quite literally everything around here get into the circuit. I may have to wait until I get that installed to be able to do a real proper test and then try to align this thing. If we just try to do it... Because, yeah, we're getting overlap of signals. That shouldn't be happening.
Casey speak at the Democratic National Convention.
My question is, do we still get that if we flip the switch on the back? Interesting. I wonder why that's happening. Another one of those mysteries where I have no clue what's going on, why it's shrieking out that. It's going into oscillation, and I'm not entirely sure why from looking at the schematic here. Let's see, oscillator coil, we got trimmers, got the loop antenna, speakers, volume control goes into there, and then we've got this blasted couplet thing that all goes through, which they've thankfully marked out so I know exactly what everything is. If I had to reproduce it, I could, which I really, really hope I don't. I don't think they listed all of the part numbers. No, they didn't. No, even if I wanted to, I couldn't reproduce it. Kind of, sort of. This may be a bit tricky. Well, let's try hooking up an external audio source and seeing if that makes any difference. Still getting oscillation. Well, I'm going to have to say this has probably got a little more work to do. I need to get that safety cap installed in circuit. Maybe look at some tube substitutions. I'm pretty sure I have a spare 50C5 output tube around here and see if I can eliminate those horrific oscillations we're getting. So I'm pretty sure that's what he was referring to, not to mention all of the motor boating and squealing we're getting out of this thing. It's a bit of a mess. I think we'll leave that for next